Hey everybody, this is, of course, nothing but a bunch of pretentious theoretical bullshit once again. I started to record this video a couple of times and then I kind of had to stop and reorganize my thoughts because this isn't going to be one of those. I finally realized this isn't going to be one of those that I'm just going to like fit into a 10-minute time frame, just because I think there's so many different varieties of topics I want to talk about in this one video, and it's just going to take too long and it's too much. So I figured out what I'm going to do. I'm going to divide this into two parts, and the first part is something I want to read to you. It's something that I actually wrote, not even recently, not in response to anything recently, but it's something I wrote a while ago. But the thing that I'm addressing in what I wrote has been coming up recently, like in a lot of debates and YouTube videos that I've seen, and it's about an argument for the existence of God. It's the design argument, and it's sort of addressing two different facets of the design argument. One is the original sort of Pele's Watchmaker argument, and if you're not familiar with that, I'll catch you up. And the other is an argument that I read, which I thought was really interesting, and it was based on a boggle analogy. I don't know if you've ever played the game Boggle, but it's like it's sort of like a tray of like 24 squares that you can sort of drop, and each square is fit to a die. You can hold like a die, and you have like 24 dice, I guess, and each of these dice don't have numbers on them, but they have letters like A, M, F, Q, U, and all the letters are randomized, and so you kind of like shake up these dice and you let them fall randomly into this tray, and the point of the game is that you try to see if you can vertically, horizontally, diagonally try to find letters or that spell out words, and whoever gets the most words. Anyway, that's Boggle. And there was a design argument based on the game of Boggle, which I thought was really cute. And I want to talk about that. But let's talk about the Watchmaker argument. Pele's Watchmaker argument. This should be fun. For those of you who don't know, here's a brief summary of the Watchmaker argument by Pele. Here's a quote. In crossing a heath, suppose I pitched my foot against a stone, and were asked how the stone came to be there. I might possibly answer that for anything I knew to the contrary, it had lain there forever. But suppose I had found a watch upon the ground, and it should be inquired how the watch happened to be in that place. I should hardly think that the answer which I had before given would be sufficient. Now, I would argue, obviously, that Pele's watchmaker analogy is not only flawed, but maybe even backwards, and here's why. How can we, by looking at a watch, tell that it is something that has been designed? To most people, the obvious answer is that if we were to observe the watch, we would observe it to be something that is composed of smaller pieces all working together to produce a useful result. Now, Pele's argument wishes to point out that things in nature, such as a tree or the human eye, share this feature, and as such can be argued to be themselves designed. But were we to find a lone watch laying in a heath or on a beach, in my example, what is it about the watch that makes it stand out from the rest of the beach? What is it about the watch that strikes us as something designed in contrast to the rest of the things on the beach, i.e., sand, seaweed, palm trees, birds, crashing waves, ourselves, other people, which are not? Obviously, both the watch and the things in nature, such as trees and the human eye, all consist of smaller pieces working together to produce a useful result. Both the watch and things in nature have that feature. So that criterion would not be a means of categorizing the watch as anything separate from the rest of the beach. That's not how we know that the watch was designed, had we no prior knowledge. Ironically, and bear with me now, what separates the watch from the rest of the beach is not that the watch is more complex than its surroundings, but less complex. This is illustrated by the fact that while human beings are easily capable of manufacturing things like, watches or guns, they are not capable of manufacturing things found in nature, such as trees or birds or our eyes. And anyone would agree creating a beach and all the things of which it is comprised is infinitely more difficult than creating a simple watch. How we determine that an artifact we find, such as a watch, was designed is not simply that it fits a definition or a criterion. It's not that. We judge design based on a comparison that we're making between the thing itself and the things surrounding it, which we could not have designed. If it weren't for the existence of things in nature with which to compare the watch, we would have no reason to believe that the watch was not itself a part of nature, had we not known any better. One reason we can say this is because all human experience begins with, all human experience with design, in the area of design, things being designed, begins with previously existing material. No watch, gun, building, car, television has ever been created from nothing, and this is where we begin to see the failure of the watchmaker analogy. All design occurring within the realm of human experience has been accomplished by taking something previously existing in nature and combining it with something else in nature to produce a thing which appears new but is not. Design as it applies to human beings, design as per all we know about it, according to human beings, according to human knowledge, is not about causing anything to exist. The only experience that we have with design, the only knowledge about design that we have, is about manipulating form and structure. Essentially, design as we know it is something that's only recognizable in comparison to observable phenomena which could not have been designed. The universe, or whatever we might, call the collective total of everything material that exists, doesn't fit the bill. The universe is not an object laying on the beach, subject to comparison with the rest of the world around it. It is, by definition, all that there is. And whether the universe was designed by an intelligent mind is not something that can be ascertained, at least not by following the same kind of reasoning we use with the watch on the beach. Put another way, the only verifiably successful method for detecting design available to us, known to us, is the method we've used to detect things not designed by God. And applying the same method to the universe itself would not yield results which point toward a designer. Ultimately, it's an ineffective analogy, and thus an ineffective argument. Okay, how are we doing on time? We ready for the boggle analogy? Right on. Let's do it. Now, I'm guessing, based on my description of the game, if you weren't already familiar with it, you could sort of take a guess at what the boggle design argument would be. But essentially, somebody says, let's play boggle, and if they threw down the dice and the board randomly spelled, something from the Constitution, like, we the people, in order to form a more perfect union, yada, 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 you would go, oh, hey, you cheated, or there's some kind of design there, or, there must have been an intelligent agent behind that, and the argument is, well, if we can assume that about the game of boggle, why can't we look at the design and the intelligence and the intricacy and so on and so forth of the universe and assume the same thing? We would have to logically conclude, so on and so forth. It's basically the watch argument put another way, but I just want to address them both in one fell swoop if I can. Okay, so, problem with the boggle analogy is that we have seen the U.S. Constitution before. The only reason that seeing it spelled out in a game of boggle has any significance to us whatsoever is because of the fact that we have experience with it outside of the game. And that's not just specific to the Constitution either. That's any word or sentence. Just like, and that's can be said of the watchmaker analogy too. What we're doing here is we're making a comparison between the combinations of letters that we see on the board and the combinations of letters that we are already familiar with. It's a game of recognition. And in the instance of our universe, there's nothing to compare. So if you were to take the analogy to its logical conclusion, saying that things we see in the universe exhibit design is like insinuating that we've seen those very things designed elsewhere other than the universe, which is, of course, absurd. And there's a second problem with the boggle analogy, too, and that is that the universe and all of the complex entities therein were not created instantly by one random chaotic event. Dogs, trees, brains, planets, people did not appear instantly at one point in time. It's as if the creationist or the intelligent designer is assuming that evolution states that, a liver, a kidney, a brain, a heart, and lungs, and all of the atomic elements therein were stuck together at one point and then started moving and working on their own. That's, of course, absurd. The problem with many design arguments, especially like this boggle analogy, is that it ignores the cumulative and integrative processes of nature and how evolution works, and how a secularist believes that evolution works. So that's that. So that's the problem with the Bongle analogy and Pele's watchmaker argument. And stay tuned for part 2, where I'll be discussing other facets of the design controversy. Take care and have a good night.